Hello, everyone. I'm P. Renada, and welcome to Rappler Talk. We are beginning a series of Rappler Talk interviews about the Duterte legacy, seeing as we are only a few weeks away from the end of the term of President Rodrigo Duterte. And so we will be wrapping up his term and interviewing various experts and speakers about his legacy and his impact on the Philippines. And today, for one of our first interviews, our first series, one of the first parts of the series would be an interview with attorney Christian Monsod, who is a framer of the 1987 Constitution, also a former COMELEC chairperson, founding chairperson of Lente or the Legal Network for Truthful Elections, co-founder and former chairman of NAMFREL, and founding chairman of One Voice, and amidst many other movements and coalitions he's been a part of. Welcome, Attorney Mansod. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right. So our topic today for this interview, it's really about the impact of Rodrigo Duterte on the Philippine democracy. We know he's the 16th Philippine president, and his presidency has been a roller coaster, like 6 years of his term. So many things have happened, and we can assess his impact on our country in so many ways. But for this interview, we want to talk about his impact on our democracy, right? On our democratic project, rule of law in the Philippines. So, siguro, sir, one of the first questions, or the first question I want to ask you, when you look back at the last 6 years, what do you think has been President Duterte's biggest impact on Philippine democracy?
Well, I guess Duterte put us on a slippery slope to authoritarianism.
In what sense?
Well, if you look at the what are the components of democracy or the elements in a democracy, you have the rule of law,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have the system of checks and balances. You must have an independent judiciary, regular and credible elections, meaning quality of the process as well as quality of the vote, and of course a free press.
Mm-hmm.
And on these elements or what makes a democracy work, let's take a look at the rule of law, right? And he himself has violated. I think he has violated his oath of office
Mm-hmm.
because if you look at the oath of office of a president, he consecrates himself to fulfill his duties, and then he's supposed to protect and defend the constitution, and he's supposed to do justice to every man.
Mm-hmm.
And he did not do justice, for example, to the Lima, uh,
Mm-hmm.
who's still in detention today. And he um, he is the proponent of the anti-terrorism law, which
Mm-hmm.
is unusual because it's really a what do you call it, another form of martial law, and in fact has more penalties in it, and the content of it is worse than what the constitution wants as the Filipinos to be protected from. Uh, so if you look at all the things he's been doing, um, in fact, let me just say that he also wanted a charter change.
Mm-hmm.
If you read the two drafts under him, the PDP Laban and the Puno Constitution Commission report, uh, it goes along the road of constitutional authoritarianism, patterned after Marcos's rebellion from the center,
Mm-hmm.
because he himself has proposed a revolutionary government,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
and he only backed off it when the military said it's outside the confines or the four corners of the constitution. And he also wanted to run for vice president, and also backed off when the survey showed that that would be unpopular with the Filipinos. He has been trying to test the boundaries of his powers
Mm-hmm.
throughout. right? Revolutionary government running for vice president, charter change, and so on. And then the quality of his appointments.
Mm.
Uh, because the president is the most powerful of the three departments of government already, and other, in addition to those powers, he has the powers of appointment.
Mm.
And go through his appointments, I don't think he does service to the country in the quality of his appointments. He is not the only one, by the way, who has tried to appoint the people to the other departments, or that would defer to them. But in the case of Mr. Duterte, for example, in the Comelec, four from Davao out of the
Mm.
seven, one from his fraternity in Sambeda lately, and the legal counsel of one of the presidential candidates. But it does not make for people's trust in government. And then failure to adhere to and to protect the West Philippine Sea arbitration ruling, support revisions to the Constitution, which I already mentioned, uh, and accept. Sorry, and I think in a democracy, freedom of speech is absolute. That should
Mm.
be protected, and I don't think that he has followed that that principal value of the Constitution on a free press. Um, and then, before elections, he threatened to call the military. He doesn't have that power. It's the Commission on Elections who has that power, subject to the uh, approval of the president. But it's the COMELEC who does that. And then, if you recall, he prohibited the PNP and NBI from enforcing the Senate warrants on its
Mm.
witnesses. He prohibited cabinet members from attending Senate hearings in aid of legislation
Mhm.
that's beyond what we call the executive privilege rule. Um, he has defended
Attorney,
his Chinese friends informally. He has instructions to the PNP and AFP to kill drug dealer users without due process of law. If
mm.
you put down the list, there are many things he has done that put us on a slippery slope, or could have put us on a slippery slope to authoritarianism.
Mm. As one of the writers of the Constitution, Attorney Monsod, were you surprised by the way Duterte was able to use the charter to, in his presidency, to subvert certain aspects of our democracy and, as you mentioned, nga, even attack other branches of government? Were you surprised by how he did this?
Yes, yes, he's a lawyer. He should know. And but the thing is, he's also a smart politician. He knew when to back off when it was clear to him that the people did not like whatever movie he was contemplating.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but he tried. He's always probing the boundaries of his powers and what he can or cannot do. And
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately for us, the Supreme Court went along with him on s- few critical cases. For example, the, the declaration of martial law.
Mm-hmm.
The decision of the Supreme Court uh, precisely to defer to him on what we call the sufficiency of the factual basis for declaring martial law.
Mm-hmm.
By deferring to him and say he's the one who knows what the facts are,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore we should give him the benefit of that. And and in fact, the Supreme Court even said even if it turned out to be wrong in his appreciation of the facts, he was the one closest to the ground. The Supreme Court abdicated the power it was given by the Constitution to decide on a factual basis, sufficiency of factual basis. Usually, the Supreme Court decides on questions of law, and this
Mm,
is exception where it's supposed to go into questions of fact, which the
mhm,
Supreme Court did not do.
mm. So do you think the Supreme Court made the wrong move there?
Yes, that's a questionable decision of the Supreme Court. For example, it Supreme Court even talked about how martial law helps in the development of Mindanao and so on, using reasons that are not a basis for declaring martial law. It's only invasion or rebellion that
Mhm,
it can be declared. And then the Supreme Court said that, if you look at what they call the theory of absorption, where a lot of acts are needed in order to conduct a rebellion, the Supreme Court in effect said that the president can declare martial law anywhere in the Philippines because financing, planning, and so on. And that goes beyond the concept of the Constitution that there must be a theater of war before you
mhm.
can declare martial law on the basis of a rebellion. And if you go through that decision, I believe the Supreme Court uh, did not exercise the powers given to it by the Constitution to prevent precisely uh, the the use of martial law for the wrong reasons.
Duterte actually had many other victories with the Supreme Court. For example, they ruled also that he should be given much leeway in withdrawing from a treaty. And actually, some of these wins stem from certain what experts or some other sectors say are loopholes in the Constitution that, for example, allow a president to withdraw from a treaty without the concurrence of Senate. Did the presidency of Duterte make you realize or see certain gaps in the charter which the first time you've seen them actually used or exploited than
No,
before?
I don't think that's a gap. The Constitution is not perfect, but on,
Mm,
on that point, they just allowed him to do it in
mhm,
deference to him. Either in that case, I think that the legislature, um, although the power not to act on it, which is the same as to withdraw, can be justified, uh, but for the right reasons.
mm. Do you think, Attorney Monsod, that the presidency of Duterte has also paved the way, or the way he has handled the presidency and used its powers, is paving the way, or could also give new powers to the incoming president, President-elect Marcos?
Well, I think the Supreme Court decisions is a bad precedent for the next administration, because as I said, now martial law can be declared uh, anywhere in the Philippines at any time, given the circumstances that allowed Duterte to extend martial law beyond the 60 days. And he extended it, if you recall, twice, long after the Marawi so-called situation had already been solved or addressed. There still was martial law in Mindanao, isn't it? And that to me is a very bad precedent
Mm,
uh, that can be used by um, the next administrations, that Supreme
mm,
Court decision.
mhm.
And
When we
and
look
then
back at the,
anti-terrorism law is the same thing, right? Anti-terrorism law
mhm,
is the same thing. That it's a very dangerous law. Uh,
mhm,
there is no judicial intervention at all in the process up to 24 days, and they allowed it because the warrant of arrest was not mentioned. It was detention of suspected terrorists. In other words, the 24 days was going to be used to extract
mhm.
uh, information from the detained person. That's not the purpose. The purpose is the warrant of arrest. You already present evidence to the court of 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 the basis for the warrant, which means you already have information. But
Mm-hmm.
with the terrorism law, you can extract the information for a period of 25 days, 24
Mm-hmm.
days. And they said, well, but he can be visited by lawyer and family. And my question is, are lawyers and family there 24 hours a day
Mm-hmm.
for 24 days? And there are many ways of torture that are not visible to the eye.
Mm-hmm. Right. So you're saying, Attorney Monsod, that the kinds of laws and policies that Duterte has created or has supported makes a lot of sectors who could, for example, have legitimate grievances against the government more vulnerable to being red tagged, for example, or being labeled terrorists. What
Yes.
impact do you think this has on democracy? Like, make people understand what about these moves, like targeting critics of the government. Why does this matter to democracy?
Well, as I
Why
said,
is
I said the elements of a democracy, and let's go through it, is rule of law, system of checks and balances. You cannot have system of checks and balances you have weakened an institution by the quality of your appointments. And the best example to me of that is that the ombudsman, uh, in his early decisions, seemed to be more concerned about protecting government officials from criticism than he is of protecting the rights of the people against abuses of government. The ombudsman is supposed to protect the people against the government and not the other way around.
Mhm.
So,
Yes,
and
I think
then
you're speaking of the
yes,
SAL,
yeah,
the
yeah,
policies on SAL and restricting access to it. So we can go to that actually, attorney. No, it's part of my questions also. So we have the SALN, and we know that President Duterte has kept his secret since 2018. So that involves around 4 to 5 SALNs of his. And for the benefit of viewers, no, the SALN is a document that's supposed to show the wealth and the liabilities also of a government official. So, sir, why should citizens care that this is happening? That we have an ombudsman who is restricting public
yeah.
access to the SAL, and we have a president who refuses to make public his SAL. And when in the past, right, presidents would just release that document outright, diba? No questions asked, no requests needed. I-release lang yan publicly, ibibigay lang sa media. So what does it mean that we have no longer that luxury, or the privilege of
Well,
those documents?
yes. That means that the check and balance system is not working well. And by the way, in the check and balance system, unlike in the United States, where it's among the executive, the judiciary, and the legislative, we extended it. We included the checks and balance system with the constitutional commissions and the
Mm-hmm.
office of the ombudsman. These are
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be part of the check and balance system of government. And instead of strengthening this system has been weakened during the Duterte regime.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you remind me also, no, of the commissions that have been frequently attacked verbally by the president. Like we recall how the commission on audit has been slammed by Duterte. Its officials have even been threatened with violence. Like the president has said he would slap auditors because of their adverse conclusions about certain government spending. So when we talk about these commissions, no, like we also understand the constitution to provide checks and balance in the different branches of government, right? Like the legislative is supposed to balance the powers of the executive, judiciary, and vice versa. Uh, we also look at the attacks that Duterte has made against these branches. For example, yung targeted attacks using the law to target opposition senators. For example, Laya de Lima's in jail. We know that former Senator Antonio Trillanes IV has also been he tried to put Trillanes in jail also by yung avoiding yung amnesty niya a few years ago. So these kinds of attacks on senators on the legislative branch, how do you think this impacts on our democracy, and what does this mean for future presidents on what they can do about this checks and balance system?
Yes, and so I don't know. We have a long way to go on getting back on track on the quality of our democracy.
Mm,
As a matter of fact, uh, in addition to all this, the democracy has failed the poor. Democracy has not been kind to our poor, and
Mm.
and I think that's part of the response in the last elections of the people, that there is a very deep frustration and anger at the inability of administrations after EDSA to deliver on the promise of a new social order. And part of this is our fault. Those of us who've been in government, for example, it we have to apologize to the poor for our failures in this regard. Uh, the basic thing. Let's put it this way: the basic principles in the Constitution, in my view, are three. Number
Mm.
one, that the heart of the Constitution is social justice, where the center of our development should be the poor in addressing not only poverty but inequality. Number two, never again to any authoritarianism. And number three, the economy must be firmly and safely held by Filipinos themselves. These are, to me, the three basic values of our Constitution. Now you compare, you set up the performance of the Duterte administration in this regard and see whether he has fulfilled his promises.
Mm. Attorney Monsod, I also just want to mention and return to the something that Duterte was very aggressive at in his term. Aside from talking about threats, death threats for drug addicts, no, he would really focus on threatening opposition figures and anyone actually critical of his government, from lawyer groups to journalists to media outfits. So many anyone basically who threatened his presidency, he really targeted almost on a daily basis, no, through his speeches, his daily yung mga talk to the people messages niya. I just want to ask, no, because the government always spins those kinds of threats as Duterte's way of protecting his presidency. Sometimes they say it's just a joke. Sometimes they say it's just his style of governance. But there is a real impact on democracy and how we perceive, right, like grievances against the government or critics of the government. As someone who framed our constitution, how do you explain to Filipinos why you know uh the president shouldn't be targeting critics in this way, that we have, of course, he has a right to his opinion and everything, but may impact yung kanyang targeting critics on a
Yeah.
larger scale, on a deeper level. How do you explain that to people who maybe
Well,
misunderstood?
first of all, I think our schools and education system have failed in informing and educating people on the Constitution. The survey showed that 73% of the population either know nothing or very little about the Constitution. And as a former Justice Souter of the Supreme Court of the U.S. said that a democracy cannot prosper uh, when there is poor civic ignorance by its people.
Mm,
Uh, when 73% know nothing or very little about the Constitution, and why we are in this state of today, not only in the economy but on peace and order and authoritarianism in our midst and so on. He said that unless the people understand everything in a true light, then somebody will come along and tell them, "I will solve all your problems if you give me total powers." And that's when democracy dies. Incidentally, this is not only happening in the Philippines; it's
mm,
happening in many parts of the world. And democracy has been unkind uh, to the
mm,
poor, and it's happening in many places, correct? Not only here in our country, and we have to do something about it ourselves, or we will go deeper into this situation.
mm. We have a presidency where yung line na criticism is unpatriotic. That's something being parroted by Duterte and his followers on social media, even his other officials. Ganyan yung sinasabi nila pag sinasabing if anything you say, if you say something bad about the government, you're you're unpatriotic, you are bringing the government down. Why do you think this idea has taken root in a society that for so many decades has prided itself in being a very vibrant democracy, where the press is, usually able to speak its mind
we,
without
we
any.
don't have a we don't
Why
have a
did it?
vibrant democracy,
Mm,
and the free press, that is one of the good things happening in our place, even with abuses by some members of the media, is still
mm,
it was still a hopeful sign, and the free press is now being suppressed, and unfortunately, many in the press have engaged in self censorship,
mm-hmm,
uh, uh, either out of fear or favor, and these things have to change, and we have to start from the ground up, from the ground. What Because if you look at our situation today, on what happened during the pandemic, I think the the a point of hope, was a light, of steaming light of hope, is that you can have transformative um, moves at the ground, transformative events, for example, in movements at the ground, regardless of who is in power. The best example are the community pantries,
mm-hmm,
and a lot of people who are willing to share with those who do not have, and that's the hope in our country. That that's the window that we should look into and encourage. But you know what that means? It means that the wealthy and the powerful, who have gained more wealth and power even during a pandemic, must be willing to give up some of these, or most of this, until we have a new generation of leaders who come from the poor.
mm,
So they must advocate policies and programs that may not be in their interest. And to me, I'm calling the powerful, the political dynasties, and the wealthy in the big business to say, well, if you want democracy to really recover from what's happening in the past, not only 6 years, but
mm,
in even years before that, if you want us to really have a democracy, you must be willing to sacrifice for the sake or for the benefit of the poor. And as they say, sacrifice is the currency of love.
mm. Last few questions, Attorney Monsod. Every time the government is told, no, that yon yung parang we are slipping towards authoritarianism because of Duterte and all the other controversies he's been embroiled in, they always say yung kanilang clapback palagi is he's popular. They point to the ratings, they point to the fact that he's, still in his honeymoon period, like so many years down his presidency. What would be your response to that when they always
Well,
bring up his popularity?
I think when we look at alternatives to what's happening, we should not look only at the leaders. We should look at the leaders and the supporters of these leaders. What we call a dyad. It's like a marriage, right? It's a dyad, husband and wife. Abusive husband, a permissive wife. Still, the marriage still exists. So let's take a look at analyze not only Duterte or
Mm,
Marcos and so on, but let's analyze the people who supported them. Why did they
mm,
do that? That's what we should look into, and we should start listening to the poor who voted for Marcos. It's time to listen to them. We keep on
mm,
listening to ourselves. When
mm,
when we when we forward opinions, we forward it among ourselves, among the middle class and the wealthy. Um, eh, so that the solutions are what they say. We bring investments, show employment, we will improve growth and so on. Nothing mentioned about addressing inequality. And
Mm.
inequality is a what do you call a ceiling on economic growth. We have never grown the way China grew in order to address poverty in China and inequality. Right? We have never done it because there's a glass ceiling of inequality that's getting worse, happening all over the world, by the way.
Mm.
That's why democracy, I think, uh, is weakening uh, as the vision of tomorrow for many countries. We
Mm.
must start at the bottom. We must listen to the poor. We must be willing to give up uh, power and wealth in order to make address poverty and inequality. If we don't do that, then uh, we're headed, what do you call it, headed to hell.
Duterte systematically attacked certain tenets or pillars of democracy, including the media, yung opposition, and other aspects of our democracy or democratic society. Where do you think we should start rebuilding trust?
I think we should support strongly support uh, the the true journalists in our society. I think my good friend Berhel Santos defined it very well. He said, true journalists, it's not about objectivity or neutrality. It's about truth and fairness. And it is a profession. The trolls are not in the profession of journalism. And we should support those who still have the courage to advocate and to exercise the obligations and rights of a free press. That we cannot move forward in our democracy until we have a free press. And we should be willing to stake uh, our own interests in support of a free press. You know
Mhm.
why? Because sovereignty resides in the people, and the people cannot have full access to information in order to exercise their sovereignty effectively and responsibly. They need a medium who will provide them the information, the correct information, and that medium is a free press.
Mm. Last question, Attorney Monsod. President Duterte, in many ways, has changed also Malacanang, the office of the president. In what ways do you think the office has changed from what's been envisioned in the Constitution? And
Well,
in what sense has Duterte changed that institution of the presidency?
I think he changed it in a very basic way.
Mm.
Um, since sovereignty is with the people are the principals, and government officials are their agents. It's not the other way around. But
Mm.
the way that Duterte used the presidency was the other way around. That he was the principal, and the people
Mm.
were merely his agents. That's the other way around. And until we have leaders who are willing to recognize that the sovereignty is really in the people and not with them, then as the saying goes, the people to whom the officials to whom the people have given great powers must have the obligation to prove his or her case on
Mm.
decisions. The burden of proof is on the agent, and the people are the principals.
Attorney Monsod, do you think this is just a quick follow-up, no? Do you think itong ginawa ni Duterte with the presidency, do you think it's a factor of his popularity that he was able to get away with it? Kasi nga
Yeah,
parang,
yeah.
gave him license to do all of these things?
Well, yeah. You see, I think the frustration of the people on the non-fulfillment of a new social order is that the people are looking for for leaders who are capable of drastic solutions.
Mm.
Because democratic processes have not worked because
Mm.
the democratic processes have been undermined by political dynasties and wealthy businessmen who have increased their wealth and their power, which is not the objective of a democracy. Supreme Court Justice said that you cannot have concentration of wealth and power in a few and democracy at the same time.
Mm.
and that's what we should look at for. Why, for example, why did Congress enact laws with tax breaks for business when they're getting richer, and not
Mm.
a tax on wealth, and then say we have no money to carry out all the pro poor programs, and yet uh, they did not impose a wealth tax. In fact, reduce the taxes of big business.
Mm.
That's not the way to go.
Do you think ano, as a whole, Attorney Monsod, yung gamble of Filipinos for a president who would uh, turn to shortcuts, drastic solutions, do you think this has been worth it for democracy?
No, no, because when you give power to somebody like that who wants to exercise it, he will tend towards abusing it. As I said,
Mm.
we must know that, for example, that the Constitution is not the cause of what's happening today. The
Mm.
Constitution is what's happening today is due to the fact that we have not implemented the Constitution fully. Because if you
Mm.
read through the Constitution, the 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 the, the vision and the means to attain that vision are all there.
Mm.
But 73% of the people don't know anything or know very little. So the first thing, to me, people talk about election education. That's
Mm.
nothing. Election education is, you're just taught how to vote and so on and so forth. And but what we need is civic education year round. If that's the first step. So I hope that the new Secretary of Education knows that.
Mm. Thank you so much, Attorney Monsod, for your insights about the Duterte government and everything that we have to work for and towards with our democratic project, and especially as we look towards the incoming Marcos administration. So again, this has been P. Renada. You've been watching Rappler Talk, and catch next episodes wherein we summarize and explain the impact of Duterte's presidency on our country. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.
Thank you.